We're ready to go, right? Okay, everyone, if everyone could take a seat, that would be wonderful. We are ready to get started here. I want to welcome you all. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and to hear from our candidates. For those of you who are watching online, thank you for taking the time to do this as well. Tonight, we are getting to know our two finalists for our city manager position. We'll be asking Doug and Joanne to introduce themselves and answer 3 prepared questions. Following these questions, we will open it up to Q&A with the audience, about 30 minutes of that, and the rest of the time you will have to mingle with the candidates, ask them questions one-on-one. So candidates, if you'll please introduce yourselves and present your approach as to how environmental sustainability, social equity, and economic development can work together for a balanced community. And I am going to invite Doug to come up here first and introduce yourself and give your answers, and then I'll introduce Joanne. So please, come on, can we give a round of applause, please? Do you want me to turn this off? Because your mic. Turn it on, you just. Don and Stacy.
We're good? All right. Can you hear me in the back? Scoot that up a little bit. First of all, thank you all for being here. It really shows your interest in the community and your love for the community. I got to put my glasses on because I can't see without them anymore. So I'm Doug Schultz, as the mayor mentioned, and I've just spent the last, 8 hours relaxing, kicking my feet up, getting to know people, and meeting some very fine individuals. I have to say the interview process has been very well organized. It's been thorough, and it's been a great opportunity for those who participated in the panels, as well as myself, to get to know each other, learn a little bit about the community and about the city organization. My life's journey began in Pipestone, Minnesota, where I was born. I was raised in a small town about 18 miles away from Pipestone in South Dakota called Flandreau, where my father was a police officer and my mother worked in a local dental office. I was very interested in sports, which kept me outside and active most of my youth. And by the time I reached high school, I was pretty sure the only reason I was attending high school was to play sports. Needless to say, my first year of college was a reality check because I didn't really know how to study. Big life-changing moment for me. I received my undergraduate and graduate degrees from Minnesota State University. At the time, it was called Mankato State University. Fast forward 37 years, and I have served as a city manager 32 of those years, in 2 cities in Minnesota, 3 cities in Washington, and 1 city in California. I've been married to my high school sweetheart for 42 years. We met when I was a junior, she was a freshman, and we raised 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, who now have blessed us with 7 grandchildren. 5 years ago, about a year after we moved to Banning, California, we were fortunate enough to be able to purchase a 10-acre ranchette. And we began raising our own animals, pork, chickens, didn't get into beef, and raising our own food. It was kind of just a desire for us to have healthy food and live a little cleaner lives. Unfortunately, when I left the city of Banning, because there's only 1 city manager in every city, I knew we couldn't stay at the ranch, so we started talking with Realtor, and It sold before it was listed, which put us in a bit of a bind because we no longer had a house, and I didn't know where I was going to land next. So we embarked on an 8-week tour of national parks, and have had a great time. Kind of rejuvenating for me, but I'm ready to get back to work. 8 weeks in a camper. Even though it's just the two of us, and I love my wife very much, it's very close quarters. So I'm excited about the opportunity to serve as the next city manager of the city of Flagstaff because the community priorities are closely aligned with my background and experiences, especially those that I had in Bainbridge Island as the city manager, where environmental stewardship, sustainability, and innovative infrastructure, a safe and healthy community make it a great place to live, much like Flagstaff. Also like Flagstaff and Bainbridge Island, tourism is a major driver in the local economy. And although tourism is great, it does not provide the jobs or the revenue needed to sustain a community. And as we found out during COVID-19, the tourism industry got hit very hard, and cities that rely on tourism had very difficult times. Some are still trying to recover. So finally, an inclusive and engaged community provides social, economic, and psychological benefits that both strengthen individual well-being and collective resilience. And when inclusion and engagement intersect, they create a foundation for thriving, healthy, and sustainable community. And in my observation during the past week, being here in Flagstaff, I've truly found that Flagstaff is an inclusive and engaged community. To me, that's a very attractive community for a city manager. So I've been asked to present my approach as to how environmental sustainability, social equity, and economic development can work together for balanced community growth. This is known as a green economic framework. Sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, circular economy practices are key examples of a green economy. We know that energy production and transportation are the leading contributors to CO2 emissions, followed by agriculture, industrial processes, and waste. Imagine a city in which it's easy, attractive, and affordable for all of us to lead happy, healthy lives while using fewer of the Earth's resources. Sustainable development is a product of many stories, worldwide views, values, actions, and perspectives, which to be fully appreciated requires a readiness to listen to others, respect differences, suspend established opinions, and see with others' eyes while allowing other voices to resonate and be heard. Sustainable development is a dialogue, and it's a dialogue of values. Flagstaff has many policies and practices already in place, which are leading toward achieving sustainability goals and social equity. Sustainable housing and economic development will make Flagstaff an even better place to live and work. So how do we get there without diminishing the achieved successes and causing environmental degradation? A simple answer is by encouraging inclusive community engagement so all voices are heard. Collaboration with stakeholders always achieves better outcomes for a community. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I have all the answers. Obviously, that would be arrogant, ignorant, and disrespectful to others who have valuable input and experience and know this community much better than I. What I can tell you is I have the experiences that can add value to the conversations, as well as experience implementing environmental, economic, and social equity policies and goals in communities very similar to Flagstaff. Companies like Apple, Starbucks, Patagonia, Nike, and IKEA, to name a few, have endorsed corporate sustainability practices. Many others have done the same by reducing climate impact, conserving natural resources, and eliminating harmful materials. Engaging existing businesses in Flagstaff to do the same, if they haven't already, would be a good place to start. Sustainable urban development is possible and can offer a path to managing urban growth while promoting economic, social, and environmental well-being. By prioritizing inclusive economic development, effective urban planning, affordable housing, environmental sustainability, and community participation, policymakers can enable cities to become hubs of innovation, resilience, and sustainability. So in summary, the following strategies are recommended to balance community growth, environmental sustainability, social equity, and economic development. First is mixed income housing models, integrating affordable housing options for lower income families within economically diverse neighborhoods to support economic mobility and social cohesiveness. Community engagement, I've already touched on that. Involve residents at every stage of the planning process to ensure developments reflect the needs, values, and aspirations of all community members. Inclusive urban design, prioritizing accessibility and diversity in community planning to create spaces that serve all residents. Social equity and sustainability, ensure that social equity activities are included within the integrated approach to sustainability, promoting equal access to public services, and ensuring procedural fairness. And then balanced budgeting, allocating financial resources strategically to foster both development and equitable access to services for all community members. By implementing these strategies, cities can create communities that are not only economically viable, but also environmentally sustainable and socially equitable. Thank you.
For anyone who came in while Mr. Schultz was speaking, I'm going to introduce Joanne Keene, and then we have 3 questions that are going to be facilitated by Stacy Salzberg that we've asked the candidates to prepare answers to ahead of time. Then we'll have about 30 minutes of Q&A from the audience, and then we will have time for mingling, speaking one-on-one with the candidates, and so forth. The QR code that you see up here is what we're asking you to use to fill out your feedback for City Council, and we will be taking that into consideration as we deliberate. So it is my honor to ask Joanne to come up and present to you.
Turn myself on. Oh, I'm on. Oh my gosh, wow. It's exciting, it just happens. Well, good evening. It's so good to look out in the audience and see so many people I know, friends, community members that I've gotten to know over the years, and some new faces as well. To introduce myself, my name is Joanne Keene, and as the mayor mentioned, I'm a candidate for the city manager position for the city of Flagstaff. I'm so honored to be here today and to be in this final 2 for this position. This is a wonderful community, and I feel very blessed to live here. I want to start today by just saying thank you to all of you for being present and being in the room and engaging in this process. It's really important and probably one of the most important decisions council makes, aside from adopting a budget. But it's really important that you're all here and participating in this process. So just a little bit of background on me. So I've lived in Flagstaff for 20 years. I'm kind of the typical Flagstaff boomerang story where I attended NAU in the early to mid 90s. Left and then came back to Flagstaff. And when I was at Flagstaff in the early 90s, it was when Heritage Square wasn't what it was now. I remember McGaw's being downtown. And as I said earlier in our staff panel, I worked as a a news reporter for CAF Radio, and I remember actually sitting in this room covering city council meetings, and I believe it was the pedestrian committee too that I used to report on. So very exciting times. Kind of got my start in local government that way. So I was originally born in the United Kingdom. My family moved over when I was 8. My dad was a design engineer for Martin Marietta and was recruited to the US to work on the space shuttle in New Orleans. And we moved from Northern England to New Orleans. And my husband always jokes that there should have been a sitcom about that. But I moved a lot as a child. I moved around a lot, I think 13 different schools. And I have to say that Flagstaff is the place that I have lived. Excuse me. Sorry, I knew I was going to do that. It's the place I've lived the longest. It's been a long day. I really, this place is my home. And I have a lot invested in Flagstaff. So my husband, John, and I, we met in Washington, D.C., and I moved him to Flagstaff, and he loves it here as much as I do. We're both proud public servants, no children, but we have a rescue dog, Mabel, who goes everywhere with us and is a part of our community as well. You can also find us volunteering in the community. We're everywhere. We try to be out in the community, working on trails, working at the drop-off day. You'll see us around the community, being community members. So I have 25 years of public service experience, city, county, state, federal, higher education. And right now I'm currently serving as the Deputy City Manager for the City of Flagstaff. In that role, I'm overseeing planning and development services. I also oversee our capital projects engineering, sustainability, management services, which includes which includes finance and emergency management, IT, and then also a very exciting announcement. Last night, Council created our newest division, and that's housing. So very exciting news coming from the city. Prior to working for the City of Flagstaff, I served as a Deputy City Manager for the City of Sedona. And in that role, I did a lot of work advocating at the state legislature on short-term rental reform, spent a lot of time with communities outside of Sedona, Paradise Valley, Scottsdale, and in Flagstaff, talking about the impacts of short-term rentals on our communities. And then I also worked on some emergency evacuation efforts, working on some emergency evacuation plans for uptown Sedona. Big concern that there would be a fire that would come through that area. There's still that big concern, and what we were going to do to manage that. And then also just kind of the overall impact of tourism on Sedona and the things that we could do to mitigate the Sedona shuttles, for example. We worked on that during my time. Prior to joining Sedona, I worked for Coconino County as a deputy county manager, and I started my early days at Coconino County, left to go to NAU, and then I got to come back. And I was at Coconino County during the COVID-19 pandemic, and feel very fortunate that I was on the team that set up some of the first testing and vaccine sites in the state. And I see a lot of people in this room that were already part of that. It was a really tough time, and I know we all had a difficult time during COVID. So when I served in Coconino County as a government relations director, some of my big achievements was working with a team to fund Schultz flood mitigation measures. We did quite a bit of advocacy on the federal level to fund big projects that were needed by our residents. I also worked on legislation to help with the waiver for the 30-day waiver for flood insurance if an owner was impacted by a catastrophic fire. And kind of in the middle there, I spent about 5 years at NAU as the executive vice president and chief of staff. And some of the work that I did there was really trying to rebuild our community relation efforts. When I got to NAU, it was when the population of NAU had skyrocketed, and there were a lot of concerns with student conduct. So stepping in and kind of reestablishing our community relations office, and then really setting up some opportunities for the city of Flagstaff and NAU to work together. I was also instrumental in helping get community involvement in the NAU master planning process, and then also working on some dark sky issues and kind of other issues of mutual concern. And then finally, my work on the state and federal levels have enhanced my relationships in Washington, D.C., throughout the region and in the state. And I spoke a little earlier on the community panel that allowed me to do quite a bit of work with our indigenous neighbors, and I've spent quite a bit of time specifically on the Navajo Nation during those days. I have a very strong understanding of our community's issues. I've lived in this community for 20 years, I volunteer in this community, and Flagstaff is my home. So I think one thing I'd like to say is that, kind of saying all that, I think we can recognize that Flagstaff is not the community it was 20 years ago. We live in a desirable community where people want to live, but our workforce can't afford. While we continue to deliver on our promises to the voters on our capital projects, we continue to struggle to keep up with our current growth. We are seeing more climate impacts, including floods and fires, and we have a potential for an economic slowdown with the impacts of the North Rim fire, a decrease in international tourism, and just the instability that's occurring on the federal and state level. But on a positive note, because you're thinking, why the heck would she want to be city manager with all of that? On a positive note, our city is safe, and we have such an amazing and strong committed team at the city of Flagstaff who's working every day to make this a better place, and I know all of you are a part of that as well. So just like Doug, I was asked to discuss how sustainability, social equity, and economic development can work together for balanced community growth. And I like such an easy question, so thank you for that, Council, for that. And I think what I would say, just like Doug, I don't think we have all of the answers, and I think it's an issue that a lot of communities, especially desirable communities, are grappling with. And the reality is that while these goals, they should complement each other, in most communities they compete against one another. And I think we've probably seen that in our community as well. So in an ideal world, the cycle would be that a healthy environment supports people, engaged people contribute and create a healthy economy, and a healthy economy funds the work in a community to support sustainability and social equity. That's the reality that we all want to reach. So I think what I would say, just on the community level, I think our work is to support a balance between these competing interests and ensure we're adopting policies, from the local level, that reflect and continue to reflect our community values. We must also continue to work hard on some of our emergencies, specifically our climate and our housing emergency, and work to implement our carbon neutrality plan and our 10-year housing plan. Both climate and housing are council-declared emergencies, and we need to consider these when we're making decisions on balanced community growth. And then also we have a regional plan that will be going to the voters in May. And this regional plan, it's the guiding document for planning in the city and must guide our decisions on community growth. So, and I would say economic development is important to fund these important initiatives. We need economic development to have a thriving community. It's important that we diversify our economic development efforts to ensure we don't solely rely on tourism revenue. And just an example, I know we're working on some things locally. We have a 32-acre parcel at the airport that we're hopefully going to be using for a research park and trying to get some good paying jobs and revenue that is outside of tourism revenue. I think one thing I would say is that our economic development goals and strategies should reflect our community values, and they do. We are a community that values opportunity for all, and it's important to keep our eye on social equity and how it's impacting the day-to-day lives of our residents. It's unrealistic to think that if we have an individual or a family spending half of their income on housing, that they will be able to contribute in other ways financially to this community. It just doesn't make sense. So we had an event in June, the Framing Our Future event, and it was a community gathering where we had business, we had city staffers, we had developers, we had our sustainability partners also. We had a lot of people in attendance. And we had a speaker there, Shane Phillips, who's a researcher at the UCLA Lewis Center for Regional Policy Studies. And if you haven't seen his, he also has a podcast, by the way, and the podcast is very good. But I think his comments that he made, he started off the day, and his comments really resonated with many of us in the room. And he said, we're fortunate to live in desirable communities, places where people want to call home and contribute to. We have problems to solve, but they're also an opportunity to build something better. And just with that, I think one thing I would say is that we do have a current political climate that's pitting social equity, sustainability, and economic development against each other. But in Flagstaff, we know that these values are part of the fabric of our community, and it's important we keep moving all three goals forward. So I can assure you that I will be a city manager that will continue to move our community forward while recognizing our history, values, and opportunities. Again, thank you for being present today. One thing I love about this community is that you all show up, and I think it's great that we have a more engaged community and you make it a better place. And with that, Mayor, thank you.
All right. Maybe I have to get right into it. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate those introductions. I do have a few questions that I'd like to ask both of you. If you would like to come back up, I've got you mic'd up, so it's probably easier here to just stand and face the audience. And Joanne's going to have our first question, so I'll give her a.
I just sat down. I told Doug we'd have a dance-off too today,
Right.
so yeah.
I can have you guys stand actually over here. For those that are online and watching, this is their view, so thank you. All right.
Can you hear me? Okay, great.
So Joanne, if selected to serve as our next city manager, how will you ensure community leaders and partners have the opportunity to meet with you and your staff to discuss concerns, ideas, and issues where city and community priorities intersect? How will you involve and consider perspectives from a wide array of community partners and ensure diverse voices are heard and considered?
Well, thank you, Stacey, and thank you for the question. I will say, so we got these questions not a week ago. We got them last night and this morning, right? So I just want to give that context that we probably don't have prepared remarks. But I think one theme that I've had throughout all of my interviews today is to talk about communication. I think one of the things that we do not do a great job with at the city, and it's not because our staff is not amazing. I think it's just the amount of staff we have and just the amount of issues that we're working on, is that we don't do a great job of communicating what we do and telling that story. So I think, part of that is making sure that our community knows when we're having public meetings, when we're talking about issues that are of interest to the community, when we're having council meetings where we're having discussions that impacts their lives. I think those are the items that I would like to make sure that the community is aware of. Some things that we've done in other communities I've worked is that we've kind of previewed city council meetings. I believe the mayor is actually doing this on some of her social media, but just things that are coming. items that are kind of hot topics that'll be on the agenda. And I think that should come from the city manager. I think the city manager should be communicating that. I also have, an open door, and I think many of you know me and know that I'm always willing to kind of sit down and talk through issues and help navigate. And I will continue that. And then also get out into the community as well and kind of hear from members of the community on things that they would like to see on the city level that will, help improve their lives within the city of Flagstaff. Thank you.
Thank you. And Doug, I'll give you the same question. Would you like me to read that again?
Please.
Okay. If selected to serve as our next city manager, how will you ensure community leaders and partners have the opportunity to meet with you and your staff to discuss concerns, ideas, and issues where city and community priorities intersect? How will you involve and consider perspectives from a wide array of community partners and ensure diverse voices are heard and considered?
Okay, thank you. So I think to start out, one thing I'll say is the structure of the organization with the city manager and 2 deputy city managers, one of the reasons for that is to allow the city manager more time to spend with the council and with the community. So your structure is somewhat designed to assist the city manager in doing that. And the other thing, the city manager role is a 24/7 job. You don't take the city manager hat off. Sometimes you'd like to, but you're always the city manager. So, you are out in the community, and it can be at a grocery store, it can be at a restaurant. Being accessible sometimes requires stepping aside and having those conversations, even if it interrupts what might be some private time. Being accessible is important for the city manager. Ways I have accomplished that, we have set up things like coffee with the city manager. I make a point of going out to different organizations and attending their meetings, taking advantage of invitations to speak at various service clubs and organizations, volunteering in the community, and just being an active member of the community is very important. I think I've said it in almost all the panel interviews that I've had. People don't really care how much you know until you know how much they care. And I don't remember who said that, but it's something I've lived by throughout my career, is really trying to demonstrate that I care. I care about the community. I wouldn't have been a city manager if I didn't care about community and love what I do. So, it's a matter of making yourself accessible, available, being seen in the community, being approachable, and I would rely heavily on the city council and city staff to point me to the different groups, individuals, organizations that are important to speak with so that people aren't missed. I agree that a community is better when all voices are heard and everyone is included in conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. So I'll actually go to you for our next question. Affordable housing is one of the biggest challenges our community faces. It affects public agencies and private business trying to hire and keep great employees, and the working families who live here in Flagstaff. From your perspective as a city manager, what role should the city play in tackling this issue? And what kind of partnerships or initiatives would you want to lead to help make our community a place where public employees and families can thrive?
Sure. Thank you. So I've had a number of different experiences and the city's roles in developing affordable housing. It varies from Sandstone, Minnesota, where we tried to bring in private developers to build affordable housing, and we could not find any, even though there was a need, much like there is here. The community demographics just didn't attract developers. So we actually created a housing authority We issued revenue bonds and built the housing through the city's housing authority. We built 36 units of senior housing and 36 townhomes for low-income families. In Bainbridge Island, Washington, very engaged community, a lot of nonprofits in the community, and there were two organizations, one called HRB, Housing Resources Bainbridge, they're called BUILT, which stood for Bainbridge Island Land Trust. Both of those organizations were land trusts. And on the surface, you would think their missions were competing because the Housing Resources had a mission of building affordable housing for the community, and the Bainbridge Island Land Trust had a mission of conservation. So how do you get the two groups together? Well, it's facilitating a conversation. And through those conversations, these organizations realized that they actually could complement each other. More land can be conserved with dense housing in certain areas, in areas that maybe aren't as valuable in conservation. So the organizations partnered together, and last I checked, they had 160 units of housing, I believe roughly 60 affordable housing for rent and about 100 affordable houses for sale. And because they're land trusts, they could put conditions on the housing so that when the housing was sold, it was sold maybe at a slight increase in value, but they maintained their affordability in perpetuity. So that was another example. In Banning, we were able to attract private developers to the community, and we had a 4,500 home in California. They're called specific plans. In some states, they're called subdivision plans. And the sales office for that project opened April 1st, 2019, days before the state of California issued the stay-at-home orders for COVID-19. Originally, the developer thought they'd sell between 300 and 400 homes annually. After the stay-at-home order, they revised their projections. They were saying, well, we hope we can sell 150 homes. Because the starting sale price for these homes was just under $300,000 in California, it was the most affordable housing project in the state. And we saw so many people wanting to move to this subdivision that the developer couldn't build the homes fast enough. They built and sold 500 homes in the first year and very close to that in the second and third year. Then we saw the spike in interest rates, and there was a cooling off period, but they've continued to sell between 200 and 300 homes a year. So what I'm getting at is it's kind of dependent on the community. Sometimes the role of the city is to be a facilitator of conversations and developing partners. Sometimes it's building it as the city, and sometimes it's attracting the private developer and making sure that the regulations, incentives provided are conducive to affordable development. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Joanne, I have the same question. I'll read it here. Affordable housing is one of the biggest challenges our community faces. It affects public agencies and private businesses trying to hire and keep great employees, and the working families who live here in Flagstaff. From your perspective as a city manager, what role should the city play in tackling this issue? And what kind of partnerships or initiatives would you want to lead to help make our community a place where public employees and families can truly thrive?
Great, well, thank you, Stacy. I think all of you know that we have a housing emergency that our city council has declared. We also have a 10-year housing plan, and then we also have a bond that we took to the voters in 2022 to fund initiatives to help with affordable housing projects. I think the one thing I will say is that while we need affordable housing, we need all housing in the city of Flagstaff. We need middle market housing. We need to be looking at every single opportunity to partner with our other public organizations, our private organizations, to develop housing that then could potentially, hopefully, assist with the issues that we're having with the market within the city of Flagstaff. I think some of the things that I've been working on in the city of Flagstaff since I've been here, I previously, when I was in Sedona, we actually started, we hired the first housing director when I was there, and then coming to Flagstaff to see how far along we are with housing. I think we are really at the cusp of doing some really great projects, and just a couple of examples. The city's been working with Flagstaff Unified School District on their Sinagua property, and potentially helping facilitate that project. There's, we wouldn't have a financial interest, but making it easier for FUSD to develop that project for their workforce. We've also been working with Mountain Line on a property that they own to develop out on Linda Vista, and kind of helping them get to the stage where if that project is going to move forward, and it looks like it will, that the city can be at the table and help with, water, sewer, potential funds to help with the road, et cetera. So I think we also have, Flagstaff Housing Authority as well, where we actually own our own units, and we're looking at redeveloping, creating some more units, and then redeveloping some of our current Flagstaff Housing Authority units as well. So all of those things are in play. And I know it's been frustrating for kind of members of specifically the development community, that we hear quite a bit that things are slow to move in the city. Some of the other things that we're working on internally are just our processes, that there are some projects that we likely can move faster than others. But I think one thing I will say is that it is the job of staff to bring the best possible developments forward. And that involves, obviously, community input and bringing it to council as a final product. So I think, what I will continue to do is be a partner for our organizations within the city, continue to champion the zoning code changes that we're working on internally that I think will start helping with reducing parking minimums and things that are going to make a big difference in the cost of some of these projects. And I'll continue that work as city manager and continue to be a partner in our community.
Great. Thank you, Joanne. And I have your last question. I'll start with Joanne. The city has declared a climate emergency, showing a strong commitment to protecting our environment and building a sustainable future. How would you, as city manager, ensure we make real progress on climate action while continuing to make progress on our other community priorities? Can you share examples of strategies or partnerships you would pursue to achieve that balance?
Thank you, Stacy. I think I shared earlier in one of my interviews that when I joined the team with the city of Sedona, we had a newly created sustainability department. It was a kind of a brand new hire. She came in, I think she had been there maybe a year and a half by the time I'd gotten there. When I walked into that organization, it was very clear that Sedona was not ready to have sustainability at the table in some of their big project discussions. I would say the opposite at the city of Flagstaff, and I think it's been interesting for me to watch, just come into an organization and obviously observe for quite a while and kind of learn what's happening internally. But there's a clear desire to help with our climate emergency and to change things internally that make a difference for this community. And just some examples, we had a conversation on the dais last night just about electric vehicles and police vehicles. And, you know, our staff is kind of always looking at ways to kind of walk the walk. And I think that's the one thing that the city can do is make sure that we're looking at our vehicles, making sure that we're making the changes internally that we're asking our community to make to reduce our carbon emissions. Looking at building retrofits within the city of Flagstaff, prioritizing those within our budget, and then entering into partnerships. We're looking at options for virtual power purchase agreements. We're also looking at some options for renewable energy projects. All of those things are going to make a difference, but the city needs to be a leader, and I think we are. So just continuing to champion those efforts, continuing to kind of see some of the challenges that we have and help work those internally within our organization. I feel like I've been successful at that so far, and I'll continue to do that as city manager and in hopes of meeting our aggressive carbon neutrality goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. All right, Doug, last question. The city has declared a climate emergency, showing a strong commitment to protecting our environment and building a sustainable future. How would you, as city manager, ensure we make real progress on climate action while continuing to make progress on our other community priorities? Can you share examples of strategies or partnerships you would pursue to achieve that balance?
Thank you. My upper lip to my teeth because I've been talking so much today and I can't drink enough water. I think the first thing I would say is, the start of addressing the issue is the actual acknowledgement by the city council in declaring the climate emergency. That's important. If the city council in any community, any issue, isn't behind something and supporting an initiative, it doesn't matter who the city manager is or how hard the city manager works, it's not going to happen. So kudos to the city council for declaring the emergency and acknowledging that climate change is real. Not to get out there politically. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, we know that energy production and transportation are the leading contributors to CO2 emissions. So, as Joanne said, there are things that the city can do, moving toward a fleet that is alternative fuels, electric vehicles, those types of things. And I think, it's also important to recognize that, the development community can play a role, private sector can play a role, and there are a lot of voices in the community that can contribute to the problem solving, identifying solutions. As far as an example, the city of Banning owns its own electric utility, and looking at our portfolio of energy, one of the things we did was started purchasing a lot more renewable energy to the point where we were at 80% renewable with our energy portfolio, one of the leaders in California. So, that's obviously the city doesn't have an electric utility here, but there are things we can do and conversations we can have with the electric utility providers. We can make it easier for people to put solar arrays on their rooftops or on their property. More charging stations. There's a lot of traffic here that we couldn't control. It's tourism traffic. It's pass-through traffic. And having those charging stations means people can bring their electric vehicles here and not be stranded. So a number of different things that can happen. Throughout my career, I've been a member of the International City Management Association, where I served on the here my lip is sticking again. The Sustainable Cities Advisory Board. That's an opportunity to learn what other cities are doing, and it's always important. You want to pay attention to what other people are doing, where the successes are, and the lessons other communities are learning, so that you can apply them in your own community and learn how not to do it, and sometimes how to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Joanne, for answering our scripted questions. I would like to now take a little bit of time to open the floor to anybody that's in attendance today that would like to ask any specific questions. You wanna raise your hand? I'll come see you.
Hello, thank you. Hi, my name's Drew. I'm a member of the community. So my big question, both of you kind of addressed this a bit in your intros, but it was about kind of the diversification not away, but separate from tourism in Flagstaff. I know, Jan, you gave a specific answer about that research station, but I was wondering for both of you, what are other things that the city can do to encourage that kind of diversification while also making sure that it aligns with our values as a city?
You want to go first?
Sure. Oh, you can.
Okay.
You look like you were ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's been a real issue in cities I've worked in. Bainbridge Island, for example. A lot of the people that lived in the community worked in Seattle. The people that worked on the island came from Seattle, and they were oftentimes in service jobs, not paying well enough for them to live on the island. So some of the things that that we did is starting to look at ways the city can encourage diversification of businesses, whether that is expansion of healthcare and medical facilities. Every community needs quality healthcare. We looked at opportunities to create what I would say maybe micro industries. For example, in a community where there's a large number of hotels, are those hotels using outside organizations or outside businesses to take care of their laundry? Or are they all doing their own laundry in their hotel? And is that an opportunity to create a business where the hotels are all using kind of a business-to-business type format? And that was something on the island that seemed to work fairly well. There were a number of businesses, small businesses created, but they were very successful, whether it's the laundry services, whether it's soaps and shampoos, food services, things like that. And then in Banning, we had a municipal airport, and I've shared this in some of the panels. A municipal airport that was costing the city $200,000 a year just to keep it open. And they were serving a total of 1,000 landings and takeoffs or operations annually. The next lowest airport, municipal airport in the area, 30,000 flights annually. So this airport wasn't going anywhere. The council gave me direction to work on closing the airport. Well, we didn't want to close it without a plan. I mean, just closing it didn't serve any purpose. So we started reaching out to different businesses that might serve the community, and we actually found 2 film production studios that were interested. Film production can bring in 3,000 to 4,000 jobs annually on a smaller scale. Quality jobs, actors and actresses, sound technicians, graphic designers, all kinds of good jobs. So that was an area where just thinking outside the box and talking with the industries in the state that we're looking to expand. And in California, the film industry is leaving. So a lot of states have offered more incentives. So there are, those are possibilities. Look at incentives. Have conversations with the community so that the city understands what types of businesses or industries are acceptable and fit the expectations and the needs of the community, so that you can start targeting recruitment to those types of industries. And of course, you always want to work with your local businesses to find opportunities not only to retain them, but to help them expand. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit, I mean, I think one of our challenges in the city of Flagstaff is that we're landlocked and we don't have a lot of land available for industrial. But I think looking at the opportunity at some potential state land, or even there's some U.S. forest land around the airport that could potentially be used for industrial purposes. So starting to kind of look at those opportunities. I also think, and I think, I know Gail, our Econa executive director, is no longer here, but I think it's important that we continue to work with our regional partners, that we're not going to be able to do all of our economic development within the city of Flagstaff, that we're going to have to look to Coconino County, to Winslow, Williams, to maybe house some of these economic development ventures. But yeah, we have an economic development plan that we recently presented to City Council that has a lot of different ideas of industries that we could bring to Flagstaff, and ones that could fit in with our climate goals, bring green jobs, et cetera. So it's definitely something that's on our mind on the city level, and I know our team is working very, very hard on that. So, great question, thank you.
Hello, my name is Michelle James. I'm Executive Director of Friends of Flagstaff's Future, and I have a two-part question about city budgets. How would you, as city manager, ensure the transparency of the decisions that go into the city's yearly budget and increase understanding by the citizens of Flagstaff? The second part is, would you be open to discussions with community stakeholders about the overall fiscal health of Flagstaff, including the impact of decisions, policies, and development patterns made over decades? An example of this is the Strong Towns Financial Decoder. Thanks.
Can I start? Okay, great. Well, Michelle, that's a great question. I have to tell you, today when I was getting ready for my day, I wished I could do it all on my phone like you do. It's amazing. It's just great. But so we've had a lot of conversations today in my panels about budget and the city's budgeting process. It's definitely something that I think there's an appetite to look at some. Not necessarily potential changes right away, but to help increase the transparency in our budget process. We have a community member, I'm not going to call him out in the room, but that has gone through 500 pages of our budget, and you shouldn't have to do that. You should be able to find a document that is a summary, even mid-year through the budget process, of the city manager's recommended budget. And we don't do that right now. We have our document that we give to council just a few days before they go into a retreat, and there is opportunity for more transparency in that process. I would also say that one of the things that I would like to see, and I've seen it done in other communities, is giving a revenue update to council on a more regular basis, just where we are with our revenues. And it can be high level. I think that would help kind of understand that, when we start to get to the point where we're having issues, where we're, going into our recession plan, which is what, the city operates under, that it's not a surprise to the community, that we've had the discussions, that we've talked about, that this is coming. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. The other thing that I have seen done in other organizations is doing a budget brief, so you don't have to carry the big document around, but it's just a pamphlet that just, explains the budget in simple terms, and then kind of points you to where in the budget where you can find more information. So I think that's definitely top of mind for me. Also, with right now we use PBB, priority-based budgeting, where we go to the community and talk about our community priorities and affirm those priorities. I think there's also in the future another way that I think we can probably get better feedback from the community as well. And on your second question on the strong towns, I'm not familiar with it, but I'm definitely open to it. I've been reading quite a bit about the work that Strong Towns is doing, and I know we've got a speaker coming in town soon, and I'm excited to learn more. So, thank you.
Great.
Sorry, Doug.
Yeah, I would agree. The second part, I'll touch on that. Strong Towns is a great platform. What they're doing is excellent. There are also opportunities with other online platforms, not necessarily the budgeting, but the finances. An online platform called OpenGov. It allows people to go online, see the city's budget in real time, as well as revenues and expenses in real time. It can be set up so that if you're interested in looking at an individual invoice as a member of the public, you could do that. So it's very transparent that way. I think in other ways of engaging discussions around the budget, certainly it just happens to be that the last two cities I've worked in have also used the priority-based budgeting tool. The piece of it that I understand isn't being used here is called the fiscal health model, I think is what it's called. And I shared this with the city council during the panel with them. That gives not just management, but it gives council and the community an opportunity to look at maybe an individual decision. Say the council is discussing, we're going to consider giving $100,000 to nonprofit X to carry forward their mission that's consistent with the city's. Well, what is the impact of that over 5 years, 10 years? This tool, you can plug that in, and in real time, it will calculate out the impact of that decision over the 5-10 year period. It's available that can open up transparency, make it available to members of the public. And then the other thing I've done both podcasts where people can listen to the podcast while they're out walking a trail or walking through the park or sitting at home. You can listen to that. And usually what I've done with that is I've brought in a department director, a council member, maybe a finance person to have conversations about the budget, about the process, answering those questions that you hear out in the community. Just before I left the city of Banning, we actually started doing 3 to 5 minute videos of those conversations, and they seem to be very well received by that community to actually watch something or listen to something rather than at a set time of a public.
My name is Rick Lopez. I'm a long-term resident of Flagstaff. I was born here. I won't tell you how long ago, other than to say it was a very long time ago. Okay. I've also served on the city council in the 90s. If you go back and look at various polls that have been done in this community over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the same three issues always raised to the top. It's always jobs, traffic, and housing. Those three. It's never changed. Sometimes they're in different positions, but it's always the same three every single time we've done a poll, okay? So my question is this, and I'll put it into a little bit of context for you. I've been a realtor for 33 plus years in this community. We have become a 50% community. And by that I mean, of all the new construction homes built, and our new construction homes begin at $800,000. That's where they start. 50% of all those homes are being bought by second homeowners out of the valley. Of the other homes, the ones that are lower priced, 50% of those are being purchased outside of the city of Flagstaff. Williams, Winslow, the Verde Valley, as far south as Anthem. People are driving 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 miles every day, sometimes coming in multiple times a day to Flagstaff. Both of those issues affect our traffic. Both of those issues make it more difficult to achieve our carbon neutrality plans. And both of those issues make it harder and harder for us to develop jobs that people really want here in Flagstaff. So my question is, we're 5 years into a housing emergency. I don't know any emergency that takes that long to address, but we're 5 years into our housing emergency, and we have not solved the home ownership side of the problem. So my question is, what are you going to do with some degree of urgency to address that problem?
I'll let Doug take this one. I'm just kidding.
Thanks.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna go first.
that's a great question. And obviously when, housing kind of comes down to a supply-demand issue. It's basic macroeconomics. And Joanne mentioned earlier that, it's not just affordable housing, it's all housing. In my experience, I've worked with a number of different private developers. The demand is here. It's a matter of reaching out to those developers, trying to find ways to remove as many obstacles and streamline their approval process as much as we can. Again, without diminishing the past successes on sustainability and diminishing the environmental conservation. So it's not an easy issue. Cities all across the country are struggling with the same issue. It's kind of like the unhoused issue. Cities all over the country are struggling with it, and no one has come up with a good answer of how to solve it. So, looking at those communities that have made progress, as I said before, learn from what other people are doing, where they're having success, reaching out, targeting recruitment of developers that will develop the types of housing that are needed in this community, and making it easier for them to get their product to market faster.
Thank you. Well, Rick, I'll just start by saying that the city has done a lot. I mean, declaring the housing emergency, the 10-year housing plan, and then the bond. And you look around to other communities in the state, not many communities have gone to their voters and asked for $20 million in bond funding. So all of those items that were included in that bond are in the works. We had the home buyer assistance before council last night for approval. But what I will say is that it's not all the city's fault. The frustrating thing is we are moving projects through on the city level. We're looking at our codes, we're looking at our development process, but we're not going to be able to fix the short-term rental issue. The short-term rental issue is, we are banned by the state for, we can only do a certain amount of things to regulate short-term rentals. And I think I mentioned earlier, I worked in Sedona for 2 years where, we were fighting the short-term rental industry, where we had a community that was 83% of our workforce lived outside of Sedona. So I hear you on short-term rentals, and I'm excited for the city to get more engaged on this issue this session, because I think it's time. The city has been engaged, but I feel like there is momentum on the state level to make some changes and give some authority back to the cities and the counties. I think we both need that back. The second homeowner, again, that is not anything the city can do. And, you know, one of the things our housing division has been looking at, I can say housing division today, is, you know, looking at ways that maybe we can, you know, give an opportunity for somebody local to buy a home before it's sold to somebody from California. Is there an opportunity for 2 weeks for realtors to leave it on the market and give an opportunity for somebody who's here working in the community to buy that home? So I think it's a problem that, you know, we're all going to have to deal with. I think the city is dealing with it, you know, on the development side, looking at incentives, looking at home buyer assistance. I was in a meeting recently where I heard, it was very exciting. The business community is potentially looking at putting some funds together to help with some home buyer assistance, and putting a, you know, pool of resources together that could, you know, potentially match what the city's doing. So I think it's going to take as you mentioned, this has been an issue for a long time. I think there's some things that, you know, short-term rentals are, I mean, I'm completely with you on that, and I think our council is as well. I think we're pretty frustrated with that. And you're right, the numbers are increasing. You know, I got some numbers yesterday that in the last 10 years, we've seen a 53% increase in second homes and short-term rentals in Flagstaff. So it's definitely a concerning problem, and I will tell you that we're all focused, council's focused, and, you know, as your city manager, I will be like a dog on a bone on this issue. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take one more question to make sure we've got some time to mingle, so I'm going to take that right now.
Hi, my name is Elida File, and today I'm here representing Barrier Free Flagstaff, a citizens advocacy group working to increase accessibility for people with disabilities. So I'm wondering what experience each of you have working with the Americans with Disabilities Act in a municipality and ensuring compliance in programs, services, facilities with things like the ADA coordinator, levels of people with disabilities hired, et cetera. Thank you.
I'm happy to take this. Yeah, I actually, so I actually have quite a bit of experience on this issue. So I was really fortunate when I was at Northern Arizona University. Human Resources reported to me, and our Equity and Access Office reported to me. So I had the opportunity to do the walks around campus and, you know, make sure all of our, you know, we were following ADA, but were there things that, you know, we could improve and opportunities to improve at the university. So I spent a significant amount of time with that office. I have not within the city of Flagstaff, but I know our staff, I think, has been meeting with Barrier Free Flagstaff, and I know we have some discussions about things that we can do in the community to make it more accessible. And, you know, I always support moving that forward.
I don't have a whole lot more to add other than, you know, it's important for the local government to be incorporating in the capital improvement plans, making modifications, retrofitting facilities, playgrounds, trails, crosswalks, everything that promotes mobility. So, you know, that's just part of what we have to do as an organization and should be doing as an organization. That's all I would add to that.
All right, thank you, Doug. Thank you, Joanne. Appreciate the time answering questions. I will now turn everything over. Please feel free to help yourselves to refreshments. Please mingle with our candidates. Ask them all of your burning questions that we may not have been able to get to at this moment. But again, thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. And as a reminder, please utilize the QR code that you see on the screen. This will allow you to provide feedback on each of these candidates, and those comments will be considered by council and provided to them for consideration. So, thank you.